some of the challenges that we have had in this country in terms of election management. But I also think a lot needs to be done, Madam Speaker, to ensure that we have a level playing field in our election. And we will also have an opportunity to look at the proposals contained in the Elections Amendment Bill, which is also a product of NADICO. Madam Speaker, allow me to comment on the composition of the selection panel. The bill says that 2 persons shall be nominated by the Parliamentary Service Commission to represent the minority and majority parties. Mr. Speaker, whereas I agree with that, I think there is something missing in that. What is missing in that is how political parties will be directly involved in that nomination process. Because if you give that task purely to the Parliamentary Service Commission to determine for you the choice of the minority and the choice of the majority, you are likely not to get the right people that the parties want to be represented with. I want to give an example. The current panel, someone who was nominated to represent Azimio, who was not even known to Azimio leadership. So we want a scenario, and I will be proposing amendment on this, that we must have a preliminary process done by the majority political party and minority political party to submit, even if it means 3 names, to the Parliamentary Service Commission, and then the Parliamentary Service Commission will then choose 1 representative from a minority and 1 representative from majority, from among the names submitted by political parties. Because otherwise, Madam Speaker, we will not be doing justice to the political parties if we allow Parliamentary Service Commission, which we know is dominated by the side on the government side, to choose for us, the minority, our representation in this selection panel. Madam Speaker, the same applies to the PPLC. PPLC process must also have the input of the political parties, the majority political party and the minority political party. Madam Speaker, I have served in the PPLC, and PPLC is a club of briefcase parties. There are over 80 political parties. The main political parties in PPLC, that is ODM, UDA, and the other big parties, do not feel safe in PPLC. They are intimidated by these briefcase parties. Now you are giving them chance to determine for you 3 persons, 1 for the majority party, 1 for the minority party, and 1 for the other small parties. They will always give you a choice which they feel is their best choice. Again, we need the involvement of the respective parties. We must have a preliminary process of choosing the names which are then presented to them to decide. Otherwise, we will not be doing favor and justice to the majority and minority party. Madam Speaker, we want to agree. The main contestation in our election has been the use of technology. We saw that in 2017, and we saw that in 2022. But looking at the selection panel, I do not see how that aspect of use of technology is being captured. I would have wished that we had at least 1 expert on ICT matters sitting on this selection panel. Because we have also proposed that the chairperson of the commission must have ICT experience and knowledge, apart from accounting knowledge. Yes, accounting knowledge is captured by ISPAC, But IT, there is no one in that panel who is adequately experienced and knowledgeable on matters of ICT to help us get the right commissioner who will have ICT knowledge, which is very critical in the election management. Madam Speaker, the proposal to have Parliamentary Service Commission to cater for the budget of the selection, I don't know how that process, that decision was arrived at. Because, Madam Speaker, we are suffering in this House because of low budget. Our committees are not able to run effectively. Now, we put a budget towards NADCO. Now we are putting another budget on this election committee. And yet we have no additional budget as Parliament. This is a process that will lead to commissioners being appointed for Iebc. The right institution that should have catered for the budget for this process should have been Iebc. I'm wondering where Parliamentary Service Commission is coming in. We are just one of the bodies that is going to facilitate the appointment of the commissioners. We have other bodies like LSK, we have ISPAC, we have PPLC, we have Interreligious Council. This should have been the budget of Iebc, not Parliamentary Service Commission. We are setting a wrong precedence as Parliament that we want to cover the budget for other institutions when we have strained budget as a Parliament. So I am not opposing that, but I am questioning that decision to say that budget will be covered by Parliamentary Service Commission. Madam Speaker, I am also very excited about the decision to amend this act so that the decisions of the Commission shall not be made by one person without the concurrence of the majority of the members. Mr. Speaker, we saw in the last election the commissioner, chairperson of the commission, where there were accusations that the chairperson of the commission made unilateral decision. We saw the contestation between Chebukati and Cherera 4, that the decision on the results were only communicated to them. They were not involved in tabulating the final results. This amendment is going to take care of that limitation that we had in 2022 election. Mr. Speaker, the use of technology, it is the big issue. It is actually the elephant in the house on matters of electoral justice in this country. And we have, us on this side, we have been talking about opening of servers. We hope that the servers will be opened so that Kenyans can know the truth. But even as we are talking about that, we need to factor that in law. And we are going to have an opportunity to discuss the amendments to the Election Act. And one amendment that I would have expected the NADCO team to deal with was an amendment on Section 44.8 of the Election Act. Mr. Speaker, Section 44.8 provides that there will be a joint ICT technical committee on matters of adoption of technology and use of technology. But Mr. Speaker, just before the 2022 election, this section was amended further to make it discretionary for Iebc to determine whether to have external people or not. And that is why there were problems around adoption of technology. In 2017, we had this committee, Madam Speaker, and I sat on that committee. We even were taken to Dubai to assess the technology, the printing of ballot papers, and as a result, we got adequate information that helped us to execute our matter in the Supreme Court. But in 2022, because of that amendment, that mysterious amendment, it was not possible, and that is why, Mr. Speaker, a lot of questions arose around use of technology. Political parties and all the stakeholders must be involved in the process of adoption of technology, from procurement, installation, testing, and implementation. They must be involved from day one to the last day of the election until the results are declared to the nation. So I would be proposing that maybe we need to revisit that section 44(8) of the Election Act and ensure that it is mandatory for IEBC to have a joint technical committee on matters of ICT that is composed of all the stakeholders, including political parties. And that way, we'll be able to deal with the problem of use of technology in our election. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, sorry, on the issue of delimitation of boundaries, I want to say that this bill talks about the use of latest official population census report as a basis for delimitation of boundaries. Whereas I agree with that because that is also provided in the Constitution. But, Mr. Speaker, we have had contestation around census. And the census in this country has been made a secret. I remember even IEBC, prior to 2022 election, they were complaining that they were not able to get the official census report. Sorry, Madam Speaker. The official census report from Kenya National Bureau of Standards. Census report must not be a secret. It should be an open thing, and I support the provisions in this bill that this report must be subjected to public scrutiny, so that those who are contesting the numbers that are being posted by the National Bureaus of Statistics are free to do that. We have had concerns that have been raised by the people of northern Kenya, western Kenya, which to date they have not been addressed. So, and you know, Madam Speaker, this data is used on many things, including division of revenue. It is the most important data that must go through proper public scrutiny. Madam Speaker, we also need to ensure there is fairness, so that population, yes, is important, but distribution of these constituencies and wards must ensure some equity. I want to give an example. There is a constituency in my county called Hamisi. It is big, it is, has population, but when you apply this formula, they miss the target by around 5,000 people. Are we going to deny Vihiga County a new constituency on that basis and allocate all the constituencies in one area? I think there must be a system of saying that constituencies which are almost getting to the threshold in every county must enjoy at least one additional constituencies. And then the others are spread in the other areas. And that proposal was in the BBI, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, as we talk about delimitation of the constituencies, we should not just talk about the numbers, but we also look at equitable distribution of these constituencies across the 47 counties. Madam Speaker, the Clause 7, which is amending Section 24 of IEBC Act, I think we need to amend it, as you had suggested, to ensure that when we refer to parliamentary parties, we need to be very specific. We are referring to parliamentary parties in the Senate and National Assembly. When we make references to National Assembly, that the National Assembly will receive the delimitation report, they will discuss it, they will debate it, they will forward it to the Iebc. Where do you leave Senate? This section 24B, clause 7, is unconstitutional because Senate cannot be left out of a serious matter of delimitation of constituencies. So I think that one, I don't know, Senator Omogeni was sitting in that NADICO. I don't know where he was. We respect him. He's a senior counsel in this country. But it is very unfortunate that a mistake of this high magnitude was made without our representation noticing that the National Assembly should not have unilateral powers on matters of delimitation of constituencies without the involvement of Senate as well. Madam Speaker, I think those are the few things I want to say about this bill, and also want to urge that the NADICO spirit must be adhered to. People went on the street, people died, agitating for electoral justice, and I think it's important for us to give them that justice by ensuring that we pass this law and we pass any other law that has been brought to us so that people can get justice. And as we go on, Madam Speaker, I think it is also important that we look at the other election-related laws and ensure that they are panel beaten so that we have these election laws in place at least 2 years before